Hello and welcome to the 37th episode of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series of And the Runner-Up Is, where we talk about actresses who may have come close to earning Oscar nominations, but were ultimately overlooked, omitted, or for one reason or another, just didn't have the votes to make it into the final lineup, discussing why they may have deserved to get in and why they ultimately didn't. Each episode has its own theme, presented as a double feature, and this week we're putting a little spin on what we usually do. So rather than cover performances in two films that were women robbed, we'll be talking about co-leads from the same film that were not nominated at the Oscars. And my guest today has been heard on a few different podcasts of mine over the years, including most recently on The World According to Glenn, where we covered 102 Dalmatians. Writer of his blog, The Many Rantings of John. Welcome back, John T.
Hi. Well, thank you for having me back. I'm excited. Very
Yes.
different films, but 102 Dalmatians versus the Children's Hour here.
A little bit,
A
but
little
I
bit.
think you have the range.
Yes,
So
I have the range.
there we go. Yes. But let's get into it here. So I presented to my patrons here at And the Runner Up Is a list of 15 films with women leads who did not earn Oscar nominations. And to recap, the options were Stage Door, Katharine Hepburn and Ginger Rogers, The Women, Norma Shearer, Joan Crawford, and Rosalind Russell, The Children's Hour, Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine, Persona, Bibi Anderson and Liv Ullmann, Shampoo, Julie Christie and Goldie Hawn, 9 to 5, Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton, The Whales of August, Betty Davis and Lillian Gish, Beaches, Bette Midler and Barbara Hershey, Heavenly Creatures, Melanie Linsky and Kate Winslet, Waiting to Exhale, Whitney Houston and Angela Bassett, Bound, Jennifer Tilly and Gina Gershon, The First Wives Club, Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, and Diane Keaton, Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion, Mira Sorvino and Lisa Kudrow, Booksmart, Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein, and Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Noemi Merlant and Adele Hanel, with the winner being Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine in The Children's Hour. I saw you nodding along to a few of those as I listed those. Any other favorites from that group?
I mean, The Women is so good, and
Yes.
and I would have loved to see that get nominated, not just because they're great performances, but also we would have had another Joan Crawford versus Betty Davis duel because Betty was making it for Dark Victory, even if both of them made it in.
That's a very good point. I never thought of that, but that's yeah, would have been fun, especially yeah, with all the behind the scenes stuff with that too. But yes, this was such a fun poll to see people kind of agonizing over what to choose because normally the patrons can vote for multiple options, but in this case, I narrowed it down to people just having one vote per person. Almost every film and combo of actresses here got support, but it was very clear what the top two would be, which is The Children's Hour and 9 to 5, with The Children's Hour just barely edging out 9 to 5 in the end. Hopefully, I'll be able to talk about that amazing trio at some point, but it was, in fact, The Children's Hour, which, hate to say, it was a pleasant surprise, but I'm always so delighted when the patrons choose more older options because I know that I've found my people. But before we dive into Children's Hour, John, I know you have a lot of expertise in Oscar history, and I'm curious if you had any thoughts about how we often get to this scenario where we have multiple women as the lead of a film, and sometimes one is able to sneak in, like Annette Bening for Kids Are All Right, or Nicole Kidman in The Hours, but it is relatively rare, I would say, and there's only been 5 films in Oscar history that have scored 2 Best Actress nominations, the last being for Thelma and Louise 35 years ago. So, do you have any theories or thoughts on why we often see these robberies for multiple actresses in the same film?
Yeah, I think part of the issue is the most obvious one. There's only so much support you can get for a film, and they're unlikely to put with the breadth of amazing performances every year to put 2 names from the same film on a ballot. I think that is part of it, and I do think it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy with studios pushing, especially in the 21st century, dual lead performances, but you have one of them going as lead, one of them going as supporting. We've seen that with Chicago and Carol and Wicked, where arguably those supporting performances might have not just been considered lead, but might have actually gotten nominated had the studio gone that way. But I also think there's something to be said in a movie like The Children's Hour, which I was thinking about this question, and we'll talk about it, but it's very different performances even
Mm.
within the film. And I think looking at MacLaine and looking at Hepburn, um, you have really different approaches to these characters and approaches to acting in general. And I think that there is that opportunity where you're looking at this film and thinking, I'm more of a MacLaine, I'm going to put her down. I'm more of a Hepburn, I'm going to put her down. But I think with this film in particular, you do get sort of that magnetized that there's different acting styles that come even within one picture.
Yeah, that's all very good reasoning, and I also think it goes back to what we've talked about quite a bit on A Woman Robbed, which is the unconscious bias with the Academy against women's stories.
100%.
And more often than not, if a woman has multiple women in leading roles, it means that generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of room for a male perspective in the story, which can be this, pesky little problem, especially straight older male voters who are very used to seeing themselves represented in most movies. There is, as you said, a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy to it there, too, where, yeah, it is so rare that multiple women get nominated in Best Actress for the same film that studios actively avoid campaigning them where they belong. And as you said, especially in a case of like Kate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, where it's like
Yeah,
Rooney is even more of a lead than Kate in that movie. And
absolutely.
most of it's from her perspective. But the studio was scared that if they campaigned both of them lead, that they could risk maybe one of them not getting in or splitting the vote, quote unquote. But yeah, there's also just the fact that, yes, I listed all those examples for my patrons to vote for, but it is just exceedingly rare to even have multiple women in leading roles in film, you
Absolutely. I
know?
mean, yeah, you have, I mean, those are some incredible films, but spreading I was trying to think like 15 films, how many of these can we find? It's just, you don't often get the
Yeah,
opportunity to see multiple films with multiple women leads at the lead, which you see, I mean, actresses talk about quite often when they're talking about their careers in retrospective, how rare it is you get a film where they're playing opposite another great actress.
exactly. Yeah. And then you factor in this prestige factor that the Academy is usually looking for, and how plus studios being so skittish about women's stories in the first place, let alone multiple women's stories. So it's this kind of like snake eating its own tail kind of thing, ultimately. And it's frustrating because you look at all those movies, pretty much all of them, I'd say, and it's like there's so many great rewatchable movies there that people continue to discuss and love to this day. And you would think there'd be more long-term investment in these kind of stories.
Yeah, looking at that list, you think about like, really? They didn't get nominated? Really? It's one of those you're
Yeah.
surprised that both didn't make it, let
Yeah.
alone at least one, yeah.
Or three of them,
Or in three,
in those few
absolutely.
cases. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, on that note, I think it is time to discuss the Children's Hour.
What did she do it for?
What are you doing to us?
I don't think you should have come here.
What is all this?
Hasn't she told you?
Nobody has told me anything. What's the matter, Karen? Martha, did anything happen at the school?
There is no school anymore. The children have been taken away by their parents.
Why?
We couldn't find out. Nobody would tell us. And finally, Mr. Burton told us.
Told you what?
That Martha and I... That Martha and I have been lovers.
So, talking, of course, about two Best Actress winners today, and I have talked about each of them quite a bit on And the Runner-Up Is on the Best Actor series, so they hardly need introduction. But to reorient us back to where each of them were at this stage in their career, Audrey Hepburn had fully arrived in Hollywood about a decade earlier, winning Best Actress for Roman Holiday and becoming a full-blown fashion icon and movie star, Hollywood darling. From there, she had starred in films like Sabrina and The Nun Story, which both earned her Oscar nominations. She starred in Funny Face, which is a favorite in her filmography. She had been in the big War and Peace epic. She had Love in the Afternoon, but also there was a few lesser-known titles in there, sprinkled in, like Green Mansions and, I guess, The Unforgiven, before 1961, which was a big year for her, not only starring in The Children's Hour, but what has come to be known from a pop culture perspective as her defining role in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Meanwhile, Shirley MacLaine had broken through in the mid-50s with The Trouble with Harry. She was in the Best Picture winner Around the World in 80 Days a year later, and she scored her first Oscar nomination in 1958 for Some Came Running. In between working with Dean Martin on quite a few films as well. She then scored a female lead role of Fran in The Apartment, which really cemented her as an actress and earned her another Best Actress nomination. As many will remember from my episode on this, she was favored to win that category, but she lost to Elizabeth Taylor for Butterfield 8. But like Audrey, Shirley had other films in 1961, such as All in a Night's Work and Two Loves, but it was The Children's Hour that brought her acclaim. So Children's Hour began with the play of the same name by Lillian Hellman, which was first staged on Broadway in 1934, and it tells the story of two women, Karen and Martha, who run a boarding school for girls whose lives are basically ruined by a rotten kid named Mary spreading a lie about Karen and Martha being lovers, which ruins the school's reputation. So this had been adapted to a film in 1936 by William Wyler for These Three, which changed the plot to remove any mention of lesbianism. And then for this film, Wyler wanted to revisit the material with the Hays Code being a little more loosened, and felt inspired by some of the horrors of the House Un-American Activities Committee and the Blacklist, and Audrey was eager to work with him again and agreed to do it before she even had seen a screenplay, having, of course, previously collaborated on Robin Holiday. And then Shirley says she had no problems with the material. As she says, she grew up in the ballet and knew a lot of gay people. So she was eager to just take this on, fearless. And also worth noting, too, I guess, that Shirley was also offered the part of Holly Golightly at Breakfast at Tiffany's, but turned it down. So Shirley and Audrey kind of had a connection there, but Children's Hour was a bit of a difficult shoot given the seriousness of the material, and while Shirley was kind of able to crack jokes and keep things as light as possible, Audrey struggled a bit with the weight of it all, in addition to Wyler making these, excessive retakes. And Shirley also mentioned that she and Audrey never talked about the subject matter off screen, which perhaps may have added to the kind of tension and the heaviness in the air. So Children's Hour is a psychological drama that follows Karen Wright, played by Audrey Hepburn, and Martha Doby, played by Shirley MacLaine, as they run a private boarding school for girls. Karen and Martha met in college and have been best friends ever since. Karen is the more prim and put together of the two of them. She also has a fiancé, Dr. Joe Carden, played by James Garner, to whom she's been engaged for 2 years. Meanwhile, Martha is more blunt and frank and is shown to have a powerful affection for Karen. So they very successfully run this school, but often have trouble with one student, Mary, the granddaughter of Mrs. Amelia Tilford, Fay Bainter, who is an influential woman in town. But Mary is kind of a spoiled brat who often gets in trouble because of her excessive lying and torturing her fellow students, and Mary resents the punishment she gets. So one day, she spies on Karen and Martha in one of their rooms and notices Karen kissing Martha on the cheek, and then when she hears one of the other students mentioning Martha arguing with her Aunt Lily, Miriam Hopkins, in which the latter said that Martha's relationship with Karen was unnatural, Mary concludes that Karen and Martha are lovers and proceeds to tell her grandmother about it, essentially as a way of not having to go back to the school. And the lie spirals out of control until Karen and Martha's lives are ruined. So, with all that said, John, I feel like I've been talking for minutes and minutes, but there's just so much to discuss with this movie. I know you love this movie, as I do as well, but tell me your relationship to the Children's Hour and to these actresses and their performances here.
Yeah, I'll start with the actresses here. So, Audrey Hepburn, I first time I saw her, like many people, it was Roman Holiday. I was probably 10 or 11, and I just fell in love. Like, I would, every time I would see an Audrey Hepburn movie on TCM or AMC, I would record it and make sure to catch it. My dad really liked My Fair Lady, so that was one of the few VHS copies we had growing up, so I would watch that repeatedly. And for me, Holly Golightly is I know we'll get to it a little bit, but Holly Golightly is my favorite of Audrey's characters, but I love her in this, and I think she's really I think it's fascinating seeing sort of the Audrey persona and how it sort of comes together here. With Shirley, I don't know if you knew this with picking me, but Shirley MacLaine is my favorite actress. So getting
wow.
getting to talk about her is really a treat here. I love her in everything. I think the first time I probably saw her would have been Terms of Endearment in high school, and it played on TBS all the time, so I would catch it there in pieces. But she's just so strong at everything. She does comedy, she does drama, she's good in genre films, westerns, she can sing, she can dance, and she brings this sort of character actress drive that sort of feels like Bette Davis and Meryl Streep to a degree, but there's that movie star bit that like you can't abandon. It's a Shirley MacLaine performance, but it's not necessarily a Shirley MacLaine character always. And so I really love her approach in everything. I don't know that I've ever seen a bad Shirley MacLaine performance, even if they've occasionally shown up in bad movies. And
I love that. I had no idea, by the way,
oh,
about that. So that's very exciting.
yes, no, I'm really excited.
It's
Shirley, yeah,
fate.
Shirley is my go-to
She is
accent.
she is she is your Glenn, you could
She's my
say.
Glenn, exactly. Oh God, I don't know if I could live up to that, but I've got gaps in my Shirley viewing. But
I'm waiting for your Shirley MacLaine podcast.
I
That's
will.
all I'm saying.
The world according to Cheryl.
There we
Um,
go.
but in terms of the movie, this is my second time watching it, and adored it. I think this is such a wonderfully honest film, and I think it's one that's really tight. Every scene sort of leads into the next. There's very much this action leads in. It feels like a screenwriting course while watching it. It's so well done by Lillian Hellman, and obviously we're focusing on Audrey and Shirley, but really the performances in this are really across the board really good. You've got really strong work from Faye Bainter in her final film role. Miriam Hopkins is terrific. James Garner is a really interesting sort of approach to a character that I don't know that all actors would have been able to pull off, especially in 1961 in terms of like the views of masculinity on it. And then Karen Balkin just you just I don't know if you love to hate her, but you definitely hate her during it. She is playing something else in this. It's really a fascinating performance and doesn't have a lot of the sort of naivete you might have expected from a child performance in the 1960s. You really just go in and do not care for that little girl from the start.
Yeah, it's really a great ensemble. It really is. But yeah, I don't know when I first saw this, but every time I've seen it, because I've seen it a few times and I know where it's going, I do still feel that kind of heaviness in my chest that kind of brings up all of that sort of shame and the negativity that I felt when I was younger, even just like coming to terms with sexuality stuff and things of that nature. I think Weiler does an excellent job of really modulating the film to where you can see just the exhaustion as they are so burdened with this horrible lie. But I will say that on previous watches, I definitely connected much more with Shirley MacLaine in her performance and how she's communicating that self-loathing and just the absolute love she has for Karen. Whereas with Audrey, I felt it was more reactive and I didn't connect as much to the sort of push and pull that her character's facing and dealing with not knowing if she wants to marry this handsome doctor because of her loyalty to Martha and all her responsibilities at the school and how might that change. I just didn't really connect with that earlier, but I really felt from them both on this watch a stronger connection in tandem with each other personally, because you really have to like sit and examine what both of them are doing and see their arcs together, because I think there are a few missteps towards the end that you could argue prevent it from being a perfect film that just have to do with the writing, and Weiler is still feeling a tiny bit tentative with this material, but I think they are just so well utilized here, and both of these roles just play so strongly to their screen personas.
Agreed. And I think the thing with Audrey is I went in the same way because my memory of this was a Shirley.
Yeah.
I had sort of written notes about it when I first saw it, and I'd written how much Shirley had stuck out to me. But watching this again, I was struck by just watching how Audrey's Hepburn's motives as a character, sort of what's consistent throughout, what sort of things that she knows. She's a very introverted character, which is always hard to play, especially opposite more Shirley MacLaine's character is not extroverted, but she's definitely more. She professes her feelings more, other than the ones that she's trying to hide.
Yeah.
And I think Hepburn's character is much more insular in that regard, but it works really well as you keep going, where you're sort of guessing, like, not just where the story's going, but also what she's thinking. And I think it's a really interesting character, and it's not necessarily the type of character she always plays. She has played, I mean, Holly Golightly that same year is a character who talks about everything, including stuff she doesn't know. This character feels like a character that's not talking about things, even stuff she might know more about than she's letting on.
Yeah. No, it's true. But she still has that same sort of fragility and the elegance and the kind of uncertainty that she can have at times in her characters and, the furrowed brows type of thing, but also that quiet sort of confidence and a firmness when it comes to the school. And her relationship with Martha is always like, she is so aligned with her in every step. And then Shirley does have that more blunt edge to her and a little more volatility, you could say.
Right.
And it's very evident that Martha is not as good as Karen at keeping things together and close to the chest, other than, of course, her big secret. But she does wear her heart on her sleeve. And I think it really pains her when this incident comes out, and it forces her to really examine her true feelings for Karen, which are very real.
Right.
And it's hard for her to live with it now that it's on the surface, especially for the time period. And I just really feel all of that. Just all that swirl of emotion she's dealing with, especially towards the end.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating sort of look at how the things that you keep secret how you become less protective about other things in the world. I always said after I came out of the closet, I couldn't tell. Got really bad at lying after that, because I had kept it one secret so long that I was like, all right, I'm terrible at it now, and I feel like there's sort of an element to that in this film.
Thank you for listening to this preview of A Woman Robbed, a bonus series from And the Runner-Up Is. If you liked what you heard and want to hear more, please go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup.is and become a patron. Only $5 a month will get you access to bonus episodes, exclusive polls, and early access to regular episodes. Thank you so much for your consideration.